They are accusing Democrats of saying we spend too much. For anyone that wants to entertain that thought, I ask you to think about the last time a person has said in this country that the government does too much for them, that their Social Security check was too high, that teachers are paid too much. When was the last time anyone has heard or seen that?
Another quote. President Biden already lowered the deficit by $1.7 trillion. They say his budget would cut the deficit by another $3 trillion by eliminating wasteful spending on big oil and pharma, we're told. But it is, in fact, our Democratic colleagues who prefer to maintain their massive subsidies for the elites and the wealthy in their so-called Inflation Reduction Act just last year. My friend from New York, Ms. Ocasio Cortez, said, quote, I ask you, think about the last time a person has said in this country that the government does too much for them. When was the last time anyone has heard or seen that? I'll say it. I'll say it right here. I don't want the government doing most of the things that the government is doing to interfere with the ability of the American people to carry out their lives. Federal, state, and local. When was the last time you had a bureaucrat show up and you said, oh joy, thank you, I'm really glad there's a bureaucrat here? When was the last time you were thankful for $32 trillion in debt, $100,000 almost for every man, woman, and child in America? Anybody thankful for $32 trillion in debt? Anybody? Anybody thankful for a border that's wide open being exploited by cartels while fentanyl comes in and kills our children? Everybody thankful for that Department of Homeland Security that doesn't actually secure the homeland? Everybody thankful for an FBI that went after Scott Smith and labeled him a domestic terrorist for daring to defend his daughter in a school board meeting because she was assaulted in a bathroom? Anybody thankful for the IRS knocking on your door, auditing the poor and the minorities 3 to 5 times more? People thankful for that? Are you thankful for the EPA or the Department of Interior that sent a man to prison because he had some ponds on his ranch in Montana? We have a government that is weaponized against the American people and is undermining our liberties, and they want more of it. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle want more government. They want more taxes. They want more spending. They want more bureaucrats knocking on your door.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not exaggerating when I say that you have called before you 2 witnesses who pose a direct threat to people who oppose them. It's funny when people have to go through that. Exactly. This is unacceptable. I'm ready for it. I don't know if a lot of other people are. But just as it was unacceptable for Kevin McCarthy to provide 41,000 hours of sensitive security footage to a biased talking head in an effort to rewrite what happened on January 6th. This is a new Republican playbook, apparently. Risk American safety and security to score political points.
The gentlelady's words should be struck. We do not accuse witnesses of threatening others. That is out of line and outside the rules of this committee.
That, and I can have an opinion.
You don't get to determine what's struck down.
Well, you do get an opening statement, and it's about
over.
The committee will suspend.
We know this is because at the first hearing, the chairman claimed that big government and big tech colluded to shape and mold the narrative and suppress information and censor Americans. This is a false narrative. We're engaging in false narratives here, and we are going to tell the truth. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. I would just point out the consent decree was in our report. We offered your staff also the opportunity to review the FTC letters. You have not come over to review those letters. Third, the idea that I believe both of these individuals who are getting ready to testify, I believe they're both Democrats. The idea that 2 journalists who happen to be Democrats—
Did you not give that offer at 8 o'clock last night?
I'm talking now. Your time was ended a few
Neither
seconds
of us
ago.
are in time.
I don't think they're here to help us politically. I think they're here to tell us the truth. And oh, by the way, the first FTC letter to Twitter after the first set of Twitter files, the very first question was, who are the journalists you're talking to? And you guys don't care. You don't care.
You don't want the 2011
people to see.
consent decree?
You don't want the American people to see what happened, the full video, transparency. You don't want that, and you don't want two journalists who have been named personally by the Biden administration, FTC, in a letter.
The Biden administration.
And you're saying they're here to help us. They're here to tell their story. And frankly, I think they're brave individuals for being willing to come after they've been named in a letter from the Biden FTC.
Is this your question time now?
No, I'm responding to your ridiculous statements you made in your opening statement.
Okay, well, let's get on with it.
Oh, now we want to get on with it. So you can say all the things you want. And I
did in my opening statement, as well as you had an opening statement. You said what you needed to say in your opening statement, and I, as the ranking member, have used my time.
Without objection, all other opening statements will be included in the record. We will introduce today's witness, Matt Taibbi. He's a journalist and author. He's one of the authors of the Twitter Files, previously worked for Rolling Stone, that right-wing publication, Rolling Stone, where so many Republicans work at. He's also written several books about American politics and culture. And of course, as I pointed out, as the Wall Street Journal pointed out yesterday on the front page, was named by the FTC. Michael Schellenberger is also a journalist, author, and one of the authors of the Twitter Files. He's also co-founded several nonprofits, including Breakthrough Institute, Environmental Progress, and the California, use the phrase, Republicans opposed it, I think 7 times if I counted accurately. The reason we opposed it is because all those pieces of legislation were a direct violation of the Second Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Plain and simple. It doesn't say the right to keep and bear muskets shall not be infringed. It doesn't say shall not be infringed unless Democrats say this weapon looks so scary we have to get rid of it. It doesn't say that at all. It says shall not be infringed. We said this in the last markup on legislation where the Democrats were trying to infringe on Americans, law-abiding American Second Amendment liberties. We said the Democrats' beef is with the Second Amendment. If you want to change the Second, you want to get rid of the Second Amendment, go try a constitutional amendment. See how far you get with that. But instead, no, you come with these pieces of legislation. If this legislation becomes law, millions of firearms that Americans legally own today will be illegal. Under this bill, if you give one of those legally owned firearms to a family member or a friend or a neighbor, you could end up in federal prison for 5 years if you don't go through an FFL for a background check prior to letting your grandson use your firearm. Think about that. Millions of guns that fit the description of those outlined in this bill are in the homes of law-abiding Americans as we speak right now. This bill would send these lawful firearm owners to prison if they try to give a neighbor or sell them to a friend. Not only would this legislation strip Americans of their rights, but it would do nothing to make our communities safer. We know that because Democrats tried it before. They tried it with the, quote, assault weapons ban in 1994. And guess what? That ban was found to be ineffective in reducing violent crime. A congressionally mandated study concluded that the banned guns were never used in more than a modest fraction of all gun murders, before the 1994 ban, and that the law's 10-round limit on new magazines was not a factor in multiple victim or multiple wound crimes. The bill before us today repeats the same assault weapon ban and limits new magazines to 15 rounds. Democrats know this legislation will not reduce violent crime or reduce the likelihood of mass shootings, but they are obsessed with attacking law-abiding Americans' Second Amendment liberties. For over 30 years, the Democrats have been running a propaganda campaign to make people believe that, quote, assault weapons are a specific class of firearms that no one needs to own. In reality, assault weapons is a message-tested phrase made up by the political class to advance its anti-gun agenda. In 1998, gun control advocates at the Violence Policy Center made up the term assault weapon to stoke fear and exploit public confusion about commonly owned rifles. These advocates stated that this confusion can only increase the chance of public support for restrictions on these weapons. Just last week, in a moment of candor, the Associated Press cautioned avoiding terms like assault weapon and assault rifle because they are highly politicized and convey little meaning about the actual functions of the weapon. Despite what gun control advocates claim, semi-automatic assault weapons are not designed to spray fire. They are not designed to be fired from the hip. They are not high-powered. They are not equipped with grenade launchers and rocket launchers, as some have said. The notion that adding certain accessories to an otherwise lawful rifle can somehow turn that rifle into an assault weapon is illogical and wrong. Proponents of gun control label standard capacity magazines sold with commonly owned firearms as, quote, high-capacity or large-capacity magazines. The overwhelming majority of magazines sold with rifles and handguns have the capacity to accommodate between 15 and 30 rounds of ammunition. Both semi-automatic assault weapons and large-capacity ammunition feeding devices have been used for self-defense purposes. This legislation will not make our communities safer. It will, in fact, make them more dangerous. In 2019, there were 386 self-defense killings that were determined to be, quote, justifiable homicides by investigators and prosecutors. In 2013, a study ordered by the CDC and carried out by the National Academies Institute of Medicine and National Research Council found that annual defensive uses of a firearm range numbered up to 3 million. This number has likely gone up since then as more states have passed laws allowing law-abiding citizens to carry a concealed firearm. And most importantly, the very types of firearms we are discussing here today have been used in numerous self-defense situations just this year. On July 7th, 2022, a Florida homeowner fired his AK-47 style rifle when individuals forcibly entered his home. After the homeowner opened fire, the individuals immediately fled. When asked if the homeowner would face charges, Escambia County Sheriff Chip Simmons said, absolutely not. The homeowner's protecting himself, and in Florida and in Escambia County, you can protect yourself. On April 8th, 2022, a man in Melbourne, Florida, sitting at his truck, in his truck outside a friend's house, was confronted by an angry acquaintance who opened fire on him. The man grabbed his own handgun and shot back. When the handgun jammed, the man retrieved his AR-15 from his backseat and started shooting back. The man maintained defensive fire until the assailant ran away. Police were able to arrest and charge the assailant. No one was injured. On April 7th, 2022, in Brownsboro, Texas, a homeowner armed with an AR-15 rifle confronted a suspect who broke into his home by smashing through glass of the front door. The homeowner held the suspect at gunpoint until the police arrived. If Democrats get their way, law-abiding Americans would be prevented from using these weapons to defend themselves against violent intruders in their homes. Prevented from defending themselves, their family, their property because of this legislation. This legislation is dangerous. It doesn't square with the Constitution, with the Second Amendment in any way, and it has failed in the past. Because of all that, I urge my colleagues to vote against it. I yield back.